On Monday, December 21, 2020, neighbors in a community in Uyo, Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria, heard someone making repeated screams of Jesus coming from a building close to them. The screams were so loud and terrifying that they had never experienced such an incident in their area before. Concerned about what was happening, the neighbors rushed to the compound and knocked on the gates to check what was going on. The pastor of the Living Faith Church, also known as Winners Chapel, which was located inside the compound, came to open the gate when the worried neighbors asked what had happened and why someone was screaming so loudly. The pastor calmly told them that he was praying. Since he was a pastor, a man of God who was supposed to be trustworthy and honest, the neighbors did not doubt what he told them. They accepted his explanation and left, thinking nothing more of the incident. Later that same day, some of these neighbors saw the pastor again. This time, he was coming out of the compound, carrying a bucket to fetch water. However, something caught their attention. Both the bucket and the clothes the pastor was wearing had bloodstains on them. The neighbor stopped and questioned him about the bloodstains. The pastor had an explanation ready. He told them that he had been working on the ceiling of the church hall when he fell and sustained an injury. That was why there was blood on his bucket and clothes, and that was also why he had been shouting Jesus earlier. He made it sound like the screams were cries of pain from his fall. To another neighbor who asked him the same question, the pastor gave a slightly different story. He said he fell down while trying to hang a church banner on the wall, but still, the explanation seemed reasonable enough. He had fallen, gotten injured, and that accounted for both the screams and the bloodstains. None of these neighbors thought to question the pastor's stories any further. They trusted him because of his position as a religious leader. They had no reason to suspect that something far more sinister had occurred. But in the coming days, a very horrifying discovery would be made inside that compound, a discovery that would spark the beginning of an intense power play by various entities. To understand what happened, we need to go back a bit in time. The compound where the church was located had been built by a woman who had big dreams for the property. This woman was the mother of 23-year-old Gabriel Edward Bassi, a final year civil engineering student at the University of Uyo. She had intended to use the hall in the building to run a school. Sadly, she passed away in 2019, just a year before these events took place. After their mother's death, Gabriel and his younger brother decided what to do with the property. They partitioned the hall into sections. In July 2020, Gabriel and Emmanuel moved into one section of the building, making it their home. Sometime after they settled in, a senior pastor from the Living Faith Church approached them with a proposal. He wanted to rent the second part of the building to establish a church parish. He offered to pay 150,000 naira yearly as rent for the space. Gabriel and his brother agreed to this arrangement. It seemed like a good way to make use of their late mother's property and also earn some income. The church was set up in the rented section of the building. The senior pastor then assigned a new pastor to run the parish. This pastor's name was Prince Emmanuel Umo. He would be the resident pastor at this location, conducting services and managing the church's daily operations. About a week after Pastor Prince started using the space, he approached Gabriel with a request. He asked if he could keep the church chairs in Gabriel and Emmanuel's apartment for security reasons. He said he was worried about the chairs being stolen if they were left in the church hall. Gabriel, being a kind and trusting person, agreed to this request without suspecting anything wrong. He saw no harm in helping the pastor protect church property. However, this arrangement created an inconvenience. Whenever the church had their Sunday service, Gabriel would have to come back from wherever he was to open his apartment so that the church members could remove the chairs for the service. Because of these inconveniences and the constant interruptions to his personal life, Gabriel decided to give Pastor Prince the spare key to the apartment. This way, the pastor could access the chair whenever needed without bothering Gabriel or his brother. It seemed like a practical solution at the time. Gabriel had no way of knowing that giving this key to the pastor would become one of the biggest mistakes in his life. After Pastor Prince received the spare key to the apartment, strange things began to happen. Items started disappearing from Gabriel and Emmanuel's home. First, Emmanuel's modem went missing. Then, their late mother's wrappers disappeared. Plates and cutlery vanished. Even food items began to go missing from their own kitchen. Before the pastor was given the spare key, nothing had ever been stolen from their house. The thefts only started after he had access to their private space. Initially, Gabriel and Emmanuel did not want to suspect the pastor. After all, he was supposed to be a man of God. However, one day, the pastor came to tell them that the spare key had gone missing. This seemed suspicious. Then, more things disappeared. After a while, Gabriel and Emmanuel discovered that the remaining rice in a bag had completely vanished from their kitchen. Gabriel became convinced that Pastor Prince was the one stealing from them. His suspicion stemmed from the fact that the rice disappeared just a few days after he had taken the pastor into their kitchen to give him some raw rice and groundnut oil as a gift. The timing was too coincidental. Gabriel confronted the pastor and told him to stop keeping the church chairs in the apartment. He also changed the locks to their house so that the pastor could no longer access it with the old key. Significantly, after Gabriel changed the locks, things stopped going missing. This confirmed Gabriel's belief that the pastor had been stealing from them all along. Gabriel was probably not the type to keep silent about wrongdoing. He decided to report the theft issue to the senior pastor who oversaw Pastor Prince. He wanted the senior pastor to know what had been happening, but this decision to report the theft created serious problems between Gabriel and Pastor Prince. The pastor was clearly not happy about being reported, and this became a source of conflict between the two men. On Friday, December 18, 2020, both Gabriel and his brother left for work as usual. However, that day became the very last time Emmanuel would ever see his brother alive. That evening, Gabriel called Emmanuel and told him that he would be sleeping in town to complete some urgent work. Then the next day, Saturday, December 19, Emmanuel traveled to spend Christmas with their mother's sister. He was away from home for several days. On Monday, December 21, Emmanuel tried to contact Gabriel from his aunt's place, but Gabriel's mobile phone was switched off. When Emmanuel still couldn't reach his brother by Wednesday, December 23, he became worried. Emmanuel contacted some of their neighbors to ask if they had seen Gabriel around the house. The neighbors told him that they had not seen Gabriel and that the gate to their compound was locked. Emmanuel thought perhaps Gabriel had traveled somewhere, especially since Gabriel had mentioned that he might travel during that period. Their father, who lived elsewhere, also said Gabriel had told him about possibly traveling to Ogoja in Cross River State, though the father had advised him not to travel during the festive period. But as the days passed without any response from Gabriel, Emmanuel became increasingly concerned. Then on Saturday, December 26, Emmanuel decided he could not wait any longer. He went to their house to check on his brother, and what he found inside would haunt him forever. Gabriel had been murdered. His body was found in his room, already decomposing after several days. The scene was horrific. Gabriel had been attacked with brutal violence. He had been cut on several parts of his body. The multiple wounds indicated that he had suffered a very painful and prolonged death, fighting for his life as he was being attacked repeatedly. When the police evacuated Gabriel's body from the room and conducted their investigation of the crime scene, they made several crucial discoveries. First, they found the murder weapon to be their late mother's chopping knife, which happened to be one of the household items that had gone missing during the period when Pastor Prince had the spare key to the apartment. The police also found bloodstains on the floor of the church hall. Despite attempts to clean them, there were also bloodstains on the plastic chairs belonging to the church. The killer had tried to clean up the evidence, but traces of blood had remained visible. Now, the events of Monday, December 21, which was the day of the murder, made terrible sense. The neighbors who had heard the repeated screams of Jesus had not been hearing prayers. Rather, they had been hearing Gabriel's desperate cries as he was being murdered. When Pastor Prince came out with a bucket stained with blood, claiming he had fallen and injured himself, he had actually been cleaning up after the murder. The blood on his clothes and bucket was Gabriel's blood, not his own. The police investigation quickly focused on Pastor Prince Emmanuel as the prime suspect. All the evidence pointed to him. He was the last person seen with Gabriel. He had the motive, which was anger over being reported for theft and potentially being exposed as a fake pastor. He had access to Gabriel's apartment, and he had behaved very suspiciously on the day of the murder. When the police searched Pastor Prince's personal home, they found even more damning evidence. They discovered a jotter belonging to Gabriel with his name clearly written on it. This jotter was one of the missing items that had been stolen from Gabriel's apartment. The police also discovered that on the same day Gabriel was murdered, Pastor Prince had removed the church pulpit and other items from the church, claiming he wanted to paint the pulpit. However, there was nothing wrong with the pulpit that needed painting. Even the senior pastor who supervised Pastor Prince was shocked by this action and said Pastor Prince had never asked permission to remove the pulpit. The suspect had also changed the seating arrangements in the church on the same day of the murder, moving chairs away from the area close to where Gabriel lived. Pastor Prince was arrested and taken into custody. However, the investigation began to face serious obstacles. There were allegations that the case was being compromised and that powerful forces were trying to shield the suspect from justice. The mother of Pastor Prince was reportedly an inspector in the Nigeria police force. There were accusations that she was running around trying to protect her son and using her position to interfere with the investigation. The case saw very little progress at the police station where it was initially filed. The suspect was even arrested and released at one point. There were also allegations from human rights lawyer Inibe Efiong, who was assisting Gabriel's family, that the Living Faith Church was trying to protect their church's name and reputation. The church leadership appeared to be standing by their pastor despite all the evidence against him. Due to these concerns about a potential cover-up, members of the University of Uyo community alerted the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. The House of Assembly passed a resolution directing the Commissioner of Police and the State Attorney General to ensure a thorough and swift investigation into the matter and to prosecute the culprit diligently. This intervention helped keep pressure on the authorities to properly investigate the case. After the House of Assembly's intervention and a petition to the Commissioner of Police, Pastor Prince was rearrested and detained at the command headquarters. The investigation moved forward, though it faced continued challenges. The case eventually went to trial, and finally, after more than 5 years of legal proceedings, justice was served. On February 19, 2026, the High Court of Akwa Ibom State, presided over by Honorable Justice Gabriel Ite, delivered its verdict. The court found Pastor Prince Emmanuel Umo guilty of murdering Gabriel Bassi Edward and sentenced him to death. The verdict brought some closure to Gabriel's family, who had endured years of pain, loss, and fighting for justice. Gabriel Bassi Edward was just 23 years old when he was murdered. His only crime was trusting the wrong person and renting part of his home to a man who turned out to be a killer. What do you think about this case? Should churches be held accountable for properly vetting the people they assigned as pastors? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more true crime stories.